Hi, what's up?
How do you feel about that Ed Sheeran Marvin Gaye case?
I don't like almost
Curious
any
what your
musical
thoughts.
copyright. When it starts to get sufficiently complex and you start to see like a sophisticated level of copying, sure, but
Yeah.
I like all types of music, so I'm not trying to demean a particular type of music, but pop music harmonically is notoriously simplistic. And when we start quibbling over like who owns the copyright on a drum kit pattern that can probably be found as a preset in literally every
Yeah.
single fucking DAW that exists in the market today, and then like a bass line that's like literally like a, and then or what was
Literally,
it?
yeah.
Like shit like this is like, where are we at right now? Like this is fucking retarded. Like I think it's so fucking stupid. It happened to like the Vanilla Ice one and like that. I don't know. I think all of the cases sound really dumb.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a sophisticated level of copying of lifting music where I'd be like, oh, I could definitely see it here, but not on these like choruses, these little pop
I was
hits
pretty
and shit.
surprised. I was pretty surprised to see Rick Beato say that he thought there was like, I mean, I think there's a valid like claim to try to make, but I don't think it's justified. I think like the most similar things about them is really their harmonic rhythm. And like you said, it's just like a really standard like doo-wop type Motown progression. Like if you go to like a random like country club in the middle of like nowhere in Indiana and you just wait for like a rock ballad to come on, like they play like similar chords with the same rhythms.
And this is the
same
thing that's
shit,
so
you know?
frustrating too, is that like we're only thinking of the most popular songs. I bet if you go back to that era, there were probably like dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of songs that might have been indistinguishable from this particular like rock group. Like, are we gonna start copywriting like fucking claves? Like, come on, it's like ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I also think there's a weird thing that popped up in the case where people were saying like, oh, this case is about like, can you really like copyright like pitch that's so simple or whatever? And it's kind of ironic because the case had really nothing at all to do with copywriting pitch, considering the pieces were in different keys and they normalized them to the same key for the testimony. So like it's really about interval relationships and vertical structure. And so like the question is like, can you copyright a harmonic rhythm and a vertical structure? And I think that what you were saying before about like the specificity or complexity of it really should play a role.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're just using like basic triadic stuff, like no, I don't think you should be able to copyright, a 4-chord
Yeah, like don't play that arpeggio.
Common.
That one's owned by Metallica. Like, okay,
Yeah,
dude.
exactly.
Like, like this is the Britney Spears suspended fourth. Like, don't ever use. Yeah, it's just so stupid. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really dumb, especially when this. I don't know if morally this plays into it for me, but it does. It would be one thing if we're talking about like pop hit in 2017 and now here's a pop hit in 2018 and it's like, But this is like motherfuckers are being sued by surviving members of the estate over copyright.
No.
Kill me. Get the fuck out of here. Like, come the fuck
so
on.
fucked up.
Yeah. If this was like
I
somebody
thought it was
copying a song from last year, sure, but like, bro, this dude's been dead for like decades.
Yeah. Thanks, chat, for telling me to drink water. Sorry, I'm dehydrated. But no, I thought it was pretty clever, or not clever, but I thought it was pretty funny in the testimony where they were accusing Ed Sheeran of basically copying I think it was like the F minor flat 6 chord, or it was like D major over F sharp or whatever. And he's like, actually, like I'm thinking of that as like, a different structure altogether. And it brought up one of those interesting cases of like, if you're playing the exact same pitches, but you're thinking of it in a different way, like, is it the same thing?
Sure. That's like year one, like music theory stuff. Like, how do you analyze this chord? Maybe it is this, maybe it's not that. Yeah. The notes don't really matter. It's the harmonic relationship to everything around it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do suspect though that the jury ended up landing in favor of Ed Sheeran primarily because of cultural reasons. I really think the result of the case, because it exists sort of. Okay, I think like because of the blurred lines one, they lost, right? The defendant lost, and that one like was way less of a claim. So the fact that this one was a lot closer and it still failed, it kind of indicates to me, obviously the juries are a little bit biased, or whatever case Ed Sheeran made was good. I think at one point he actually brought in a Marvin Gaye song and played like multiple song lyrics over it, like, basically demonstrating that like other songs had been written to that and stuff. But yeah, I think it's kind of weird. I think the musical copyright stuff is in a really, really spooky territory, and but anyways, that's pretty much all I had to chat about. Hope
I wonder, are we gonna start like copywriting like ways to frame shots? Or I think that the problem with like music,
crazy.
The problem with the music vocabulary is it's something that we hear, but people don't realize like how similar two pieces can be. Like, do you ever get a friend that'll say something like, oh, like, I'm trying, like, if you talk to a musician friend and they're like, I'm looking for a piece of music, you're like, oh, well, what are you looking for? They can be like, it had this instrumentation and it had like this chord structure. And like, oh, okay, yeah, we can like find those like very quickly, you know? But then sometimes you're talking to a friend and you're like, well, what kind of song were you listening for? And they're like, oh, this song sounded really similar to that and that. And you start going through, you try to find it, and then you'll finally find the song that they're thinking of. And the reason why they think it's similar is because like they both have like a piano in them. Yeah, it won't even be a part. It'll be like a piano and part. They're like, bro, these don't even sound remotely similar. What are you talking about? It's not even the same type of piano. There's a stand-up, and they're not, nothing's similar. So I think people have really bad musical vocabulary, which is fine. Yeah. But then they get into weird areas where it's like, I'm sure you've seen that Axis of Awesome, like the 4-chord song, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, to like a normal person, this is like the most mind-blowing thing in the world. But if you have like a little bit of a musical vocabulary, like, yeah, of course, there's like similar chord progressions that a billion different things you can fit over. And you can even do this for a lot of classical era music. Fuck Jesus Christ, for the sonata form, you can literally swap out any piece in the middle you want, a totally different piece.
Imagine if someone copyrighted the sonata form. You're not allowed to write music in that like motivic structure, otherwise you're literally stealing from whoever invented sonata form first. Like, it's so stupid. Yeah. I do think it would be cool. Okay, so then there's the other thing that's like, if you grew up listening to an artist in a cultural like time that had this big impact on you, like that melody, that vibe is just going to transfer to you. And like, you know, later on down life, if you like draw on that, like where does like the copy start? Where does it begin? And I think like it's very difficult in these musical copyright cases, because like, how do you prove plagiarism without proving intent? You know, they tried to prove his intent by bringing in a video of him playing over his song and singing like the Marvin Gaye lyrics. But when he actually did it, like, it didn't even sound like the Marvin Gaye song. It's slightly different key, and like the actual like rhythm of it is different. So I think that was a pretty weak case. But then you have this other issue that's like, if I wrote the exact same melody as someone else, but I had never been exposed to that thing, like, am I liable to pay for damages if I wrote that?
Yeah.
Know? And I came up with it entirely on my own. I think it's just spooky. So,
yeah. And then it's just so stupid.
There's one other thought I had, but it escaped me. But yeah. Anyways, have a great rest of your day. Be well, okay?
Be careful.
Okay, I'm back. I remember the last thing I was going to say. Sorry, it just came back to me. Okay. So last thing before I go. The other really concerning thing about music copyright law stuff is, since ultimately it falls on the jury, you're basically putting up to a bunch of individuals just general perceptions and sensory experience, which is important because that's obviously what music is for. But you know, we can already see that listening is so subjective and different. So imagine if you just randomly got a jury of people who had a musical background, or people who didn't, or people who had a different like exposure to like doo-wop type music, and they weren't as familiar with the fact that that's like such a trend or whatever. Yeah, it creates this really concerning thing. And then the last point: musicologists and music theorists still to this day have never been able to quantify, and will likely never be able to quantify, vibe. So it's like, does this song have the same vibe? Yeah, it kind of does. But like, what does that mean? Like, you're going to say it's the harmonic rhythm? You're going to say it's the chords or the melody? Like, it's not really any of those things. It's the gestalt. And so I think that plays a really big role. It's weird that we have like copyright law about intent to plagiarize, which ultimately just comes down to, does an audience of like untrained listeners think it sounds similar enough? Yeah. And in this case, it sounds much similar than other cases that failed. So I don't know. It's just dicey stuff. Okay, take care.
Yeah.
Be well.
Well, I was another quick thing on that too. I think we've even talked about this before. I don't know if they would ever admit this in court or not, but like the way that you learn as a musician, it really does start from copying a lot of shit, like verbatim. Yeah, totally. Right? Like transcription is probably one of the most important parts of like learning jazz, and probably for a lot of other music. So it's like, so I wonder if they saw how like formal music education was, and they go, it's like, oh my God, did he copy this? And all of a sudden they start leaking like video recordings from practice rooms. It's like, he's copying that guy's solo note for note, and he even learned it in every key. Like, oh my God. And it's like,
that's what's so weird, because throughout like Western history, at least, like when you play other people's music, or when you like learn other people's stuff, or when you quote someone's music, it's considered an honor. You know what I mean? It's respectful to that you know their music and you've consumed their material and you've learned their language. And it's like, now we're entering this space where it's like, what, you're not even allowed to like quote someone? Like, there's a difference between obviously plagiarizing and quoting someone. And like you said, you learn from copying what you love initially. I know like early when I started producing music, I was like maybe like 14 or 15, like that's all I was doing, is I would find artists that I fell in love with, and then I would just try to copy their style. And after a couple, like, 3 years of doing that, like, eventually I couldn't copy people anymore, because I had, like, developed my own tastes and preferences around what I had been doing,
Yeah.
So
which is where all music
all
comes
that.
from, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, anyways, have a great day. Take care.
Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.